President Biden is asking for $4 trillion in new government spending and says he'll pay for it with a range of increased taxes on corporations and upper-income individuals. But do his numbers add up? Welcome now the man who was responsible for scoring the spends and the pay-fors in past legislation. He's Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He's president of the American Action Forum and earlier served as director of the Office of Management and Budget. So I wish we had your Office of Management and Budget here right now. What do you make of the proposals? I understand there's not formal legislation, but do the numbers add up?
Right. I don't think so. If you think about the structure of what he announced to Congress, it was, we're going to permanently increase taxes. We're going to tax capital gains more heavily, raise the top rate on the corporate side, the individual side. You just go through the list. They're all permanent tax increases. And we will use that money to temporarily extend my new social safety net, the child tax credits, premium tax credits, EITCs, things like that. Well, that means you've got permanent revenue increases that only cover part of the spending. And if you make that social safety net permanent, where's that money going to come from? And that's where I think they start running into trouble, because they've made a promise not to tax anyone under $400,000 in income. So do you break that promise? And they have looming in the background existing financial problems in Social Security, Medicare, the existing social safety net. So this really doesn't add up for the budget as a whole over any long period of time.
So first of all, I don't know if I complimented you or insulted you, but of course, Douglas Holtz-Eakin was the head of the Congressional Budget Office, not Office of Management and Budget, and that's the people who really do the scoring. So talk to me about capital gains tax. A lot of talk about capital gains tax, essentially eliminating the preferential treatment. Some accountants say that could be counterproductive. You could actually lose revenue because people just don't sell anything.
Certainly, the timing issues with capital gains taxes are always a big issue. And there's been some fairly careful research done by the Joint Committee on Taxation, the CBO's counterpart, that suggests that the revenue maximizing rate is somewhere under 30%. This all-in rate is well above that. If you look at an asset taxed during the lifetime and then again at death, the all-in rate's above 60%. So this is really, really sharply higher taxes on capital gains. Little discussed, by the way, is that they're raising the ordinary income tax on dividends as well. So this is a big increase in the tax on capital income, tax on the return to capital. That's usually bad news for saving investment and long-term growth.
So Douglas, address one issue that's much in dispute. If we, in fact, did increase the corporate tax rate substantially, would we make us less competitive with the world?
I think so. I think this is a big issue. If you think back to 2014, 15, 16, we saw a regular stream of exits of U.S. headquarter companies, and they went to other places that had a more tax competitive playing field. The 2017 law fixed that. We have not seen anyone leave the U.S. since then. There was one company that the headquarters left in January of 2018, but they came back. So we have solved that problem by getting from 35 down to the middle of the pack. 28 is no longer going to be in the middle of the pack. Everyone else has cut rates since then. 28 would again make us an outlier, and I see no reason to go back to that kind of a problem. So if you want to raise revenue, do it in ways that are less damaging than the top rate. Broaden bases, do the kinds of things that really are less draconian and allow for better economic function.
President Biden has been adamant in saying he will not increase taxes on the middle class. In case in fact, he argues, if anything, they'll be reduced. Can you get anything close to $4 trillion in revenues in the federal budget without putting some increased taxes on the middle class?
Yeah, I think he's wrong on both fronts. First of all, you can't just get it out of the affluent. That's a lot of money. And even if you enforce more heavily, we're hearing a lot about let's give the IRS more money and we'll get another $1 trillion out of just better enforcement. I think there's a good case to be made for better enforcement. I think there's a good case to be made for funding the IRS more robustly. But you're not going to get anything close to $1 trillion. You know, remember back when we had the super committee under Obama trying to solve fiscal problems? They looked very closely at this. If there was any real money there, they would have done it. So that's not going to be the solution. The other problem with this argument is that if, in fact, the net package that you put together and ultimately pass through Congress is not a pro-growth package, suppose it really does dampen, as I fear, the pace of productivity growth, that means real wages grow more slowly, And that is the middle class. So while you might not be levying the tax directly on the middle class, they're bearing the burden. And that's the real danger in this really big expansion of the tax base, big expansion of the social safety net.
So give us a moment or two on that point specifically, going apart from the taxes to the programs that he's proposing, the pro-growth aspect of them. How do you assess them? Because he claims it's going to really increase growth and really create millions of jobs, he says.
We asked folks who do the kinds of modeling that the Congressional Budget Office and the Joint Committee on Taxation to do. We asked them to take a look at the Build Back Better plan, his campaign proposals, which are really a combination of the American Family Plan, the American Jobs Plan. This is what you find. The taxes are bad news. We know that. So suppose you took all of the money and plowed it into very productive infrastructure and R&D, and you use consensus estimates out of the literature. What you find is that the negative damage from the tax increases is not offset by spending on productive infrastructure. So the economy slows, growth is diminished, and you have the kinds of impacts on productivity I worry about. They're not spending all the money on productive infrastructure. There's a lot of this that's just transfer programs. Things like the child tax credit have no work requirement, premium tax credits in health markets, no work requirements. Those are going to be even less productive. And so this package as a whole is really not a pro-growth package. This is not going to be good for jobs. It's especially not going to be good for the wages in those jobs.
Finally, Doug, let me ask a question about the uncertainty of it all.
Sure.
This is unprecedented, I think it's fair to say, in its scope and its scale as a practical matter. What does that mean to the over and under, as it were, or the tail risks? I mean, it might be wildly better than we know or wildly worse than we know, but do we know? Because we really have never seen anything like this before, have we?
No, we really haven't, and I'll give you a concrete example. You know, there's a call for more child care, including construction of child care facilities, tax credits for employers to construct them in the businesses. Your instincts tell you this should be good for female labor participation. How much? You know, what evidence do we have? We just have no idea. Go through the package as a whole, and that same example gets repeated again and again. So there's an enormous amount of uncertainty. One thing you have to do is simply have legislation in Congress, because then you can start to see how big some things are. Second thing that happens is you find out what's not going to make it. There's some things that are going to fall out. Even if they use all Democrats to vote on this, they're not going to agree on all of this. So that'll reduce some of the uncertainty. But in the end, some will remain, and we'll have to just sort of appraise it as we go along.
Okay, Doug, great to have you with us. That's Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He's president of the American Action Forum and former CBO director.